Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am Pam with Perfectly Holistic, and we're back for another amazing round of energy, frequency, and vibration. And my beautiful co-host, Dr. Barrie Sands, is here. How are you? It's been so
I'm
long since we've done a show. It's nice to connect again.
yeah. Hi, Pam. So excited to be here. I love, as you know, I love talking about this topic. Making the ethereal more practical
Yes,
and having the more esoteric conversations become part of normal vocabulary. That's what I
absolutely.
love to hear.
Yes, and I think, don't you feel like more and more people now are more receptive and they're interested in having these kinds of conversations because there's a shift, right? There's a shift of awareness, I think, on some level. Maybe people don't even realize it spiritually that that they're shifting somehow. But I think
Hmm.
more and more people are more open, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think more people are they're now admitting to the things that they have always kind of felt,
Yeah,
internally and secretly, but didn't want to talk about because they weren't sure if the person that they're going to have the conversation with would feel about them. And so I feel like they're all coming out of the spiritual closet.
absolutely. I totally agree with you. Um, So if you guys are watching with us tonight, drop a comment over here. Let us know. Say hi so we can acknowledge you guys. Just a note to everyone who's watching on Instagram, we can't actually see your comments, but we are streaming there. So if you do want to ask a question or make a comment, just come on over to our Facebook page or YouTube platform and you can converse with us there. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think we came up with this topic because we know that, well, we have personally seen both in the work that we do how much emotional blocks can contribute to illness and dis-ease and physical problems and stuff, just like humans, right, Barry? It's just it affects us too. If you've ever gone through a really hard time and you just so emotionally distraught, you make yourself sick. I mean, it happens. Um,
Yes.
but I don't think people recognize that pets can have these issues. Do you?
Yes. I mean, I think that they are energetically entangled with us
Yes.
as our companions and our pets that live with us. And so they have no um, they have no choice, and they are invested in us emotionally, and so they are part of our energy and our biofield,
Yeah.
and our emotional signature is being picked up by them in a very profound way, where it can cause physiological changes within their own bodies in ways that we don't even truly understand yet, but it's happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree. So one of the like talking points that we were gonna kind of use to help people kind of get the mindset into this topic was things like, does our, oh, hold on, let me go back to my notes over here because I don't want to trust my memory. But super sensitive pets, cats, since we're talking mainly cats here, but some cats are super, super sensitive.
Hmm.
And then sometimes cats can be a little unstable. Like they are, I don't want to say bipolar, but they can be so off the spectrum. Oh, hello, Breeze. Oh, she's going to talk. Um, but like they're fine one minute and the next minute they're just angry or they're, you know, distraught or something like that. Of course, there's a cat, but okay, we'll just pick you up. um, when we're going through some kind of emotional crisis, it's not uncommon for our pets to have an emotional crisis because, like you said, it's that quantum entanglement of our energy fields. And so one can influence the other. Um, and then obviously, our emotional stress can contribute to their stress because they're picking that up as well. I can't tell you how many times pet parents that I talk to just have a knowing, like there is something wrong. But I go to the vet, we do all these tests, all these, exam, the whole 9 yards, and they say, no, we can't find anything wrong. Your cat is fine. They're totally healthy. That's when you have to start looking at things that are not physical, right? That's when you have to look at things like emotional and spiritual things.
Right. Well, I think we're talking about like a few different things here.
Mm-hmm.
And first and foremost, I think when you enter this relationship, your animal is a relationship with you, and you are an integral part of that equation. So, that being said, I do think it's important to have a sense of a deep sense of an inner awareness of your own self
Yes.
on every level, on a spiritual level, a mental level, an emotional level, a physical level, to be able to, ground yourself, tap into that, use your inner knowledge, your intuition,
Mm-hmm.
and your what I call the inner observer. And
Yes.
then you have a cat. Your cat is its own thing. It's its own unique energy that is different than other cats. Like every cat is different, and they
Yes.
have their own wants, needs, and desires. And if we can have a sense of what that is in each individual cat, we could start from this sort of an even playing field. And so when you have this inner sense that something's wrong, and it's great that you go check it out. And if you do the tests and you find out that everything is normal, well, that doesn't negate that something is not right. So
Mm-hmm.
now the question is, well, what do I do about that?
Yeah.
And I think that would be the time where you can tap into your inner intuition and your sense of observational knowing to relate to your animal and tap into that cat
Mm-hmm.
and ask those questions, like see what you feel when you hone into their energy field. And do it through a quiet moment of meditation where you are connected and quiet, and the cat could be sleeping next to you and you could just tap into that. Cats are very good at being having two separate frequencies at the same time. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're really good at intense focus and relaxation at the same time. That's why
Rose.
I mean, my cat will sit there and he's staring at me, but I know he's somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
He seems like he's off. I'm not sure where he is. And I think, cats are weird and they have very different energetic signatures. And so, I think that as they are so incredibly sensitive, I've had many stories where the person will come home and they're very agitated and
Mm-hmm.
upset and angry, or something's happening in their lives. And they open the door and then there's the cat, and the cat just jumps back,
Yeah.
or wakes up, or like is shocked by just the energy, and nothing else happened except the person walked in the door.
Exactly. I have a funny story I can share. I was talking to my friend Allie Phillips, who does a lot of crystals and essential oils and things like that, and she was sharing with us on our chat one time that I think she does still do some legal work, and but this was like a long time ago, and she does a lot of, I think, family law, like protection. Pets abuse, that kind of, I think, don't quote me guys if that's, correct me in the comments if that is not correct, but I know it's just it has a real emotional toll on her. And so years ago she was coming home and she was just downtrodden and overwhelmed from whatever work she had been doing that day in the legal field. And she said, I would come home and walk in the door and her cat would just vomit.
Mm.
And she's like, she's so in tune to energy. So it finally dawned on her. She's like, I need to check my energy before I walk in the house, right? So she got a selenite wand. For those of you who don't know what that looks like, it's a beautiful selenite crystal. And she would wand herself before she came into the house to just clear all the energy. And the next time she did that, the cat did not vomit.
Wow.
I know, and that fixed the problem. It was just this energy field of overwhelm and just like you were describing a cat jump back because it's so overwhelming. They're such sensitive little creatures.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, we have a saying that dogs are here for service and cats are here to teach us things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if that's like an overarching sort of viewpoint, then the question I would ask is, when your animal, when your cat is doing something, before you, you know, panic about, oh my God, something is seriously wrong with my cat, just take a moment and
Mm-hmm.
say, check in with yourself and see where is my energy? What am I putting out into this situation in this moment? Like,
Yeah.
that's a beautiful example of doing that, because I feel more than ever in this time period where the energies are so palpable, you know, and the changes of the frequencies of the planet and
Mm-hmm.
the cosmic alignments and the, I mean, in this month, for instance, we had a lunar eclipse. We have 7 planets in alignment. We're having a solar eclipse at the end of the, you know, in a few days. You
Yes.
know, there's a lot going on. And this all affects, you know, how our earth is, how the animals are on the planet, how people are, the energies, the
Mm-hmm.
you know, community, collective consciousness. It's all entangled in this thing. And so it is a beautiful time for us to really embrace our relationships with our animal companions in a different way, where
Yeah.
it's teaching us how to be better humans, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and to heal and ask yourself, okay, what is it about me that I need to look at? You know, and if you come up with nothing, and if you're like, you know, I'm checking it, no, I'm good. Okay. You know, that may not be true at the moment, but at least you asked, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and then see what happens with your animals.
Yes, I love that. And also, I've heard my friend Julianne Thorne with Naturally Cats does a lot of, she has a lot of really great content and just good information on checking in with those emotions that we have as pet parents. And she's real good about teaching people how to be intuitive. So, one of the things that she says, and I think I've heard you say this too, you know, check in with your heart. Just like take a quiet moment and just try to center yourself, take some deep breaths, close your eyes, and like your intention is like, I want to know what's going on with the cat, and just let that energy, like the first thing that drops into your intuition is usually the correct thing. So don't
Mhm,
disregard that. Don't just, oh, that's, I was just making that up, or don't second guess it. See what drops in, and then just sit with that and see how that feels. And if
mhm,
it's really resonating, like, ah, like you'll know inside, like
mhm,
this is what I got to take care of, or this is what needs addressed, or like even sometimes with the cats who here, my babies, they go outside, and a couple of them are had a really bad experience with dogs last year that lived behind us that broke through the fence and scared them to death. You know, so anytime the dogs are in the backyard behind us, Breeze, who was just in here, she's like, she's my earth element, my very sensitive soul, you know, very emotional. She's out of whack. She's needy. She's like, hold me and cuddle me, and she whines and she cries. You know, she's like, she just needs a lot of self assurance because she's afraid. So whenever something like that is happening, you know, I'll just go, okay, what's going on and where have you been? Have you been inside? Have you been outside? Is something going on out there? I mean, I think if we pay attention, like you were saying, here she, oh, this is Aylin. This is another baby. Hello, Beagles. If we really pay attention, like where have they been in the last hour? Are, you know, have you, what have you heard in the background? Is anything going on outside that you have, that you're aware of, you know, since they started acting weird? I think if we just sit down and kind of tune everything out and pay attention and make maybe even do like a methodical checklist. Okay, I came home, I did this, you know, try to connect some dots. I think we can do it. You know, we can find those clues.
and
Um,
even if you don't, I feel like even if you don't know the exact nature of the stressor,
Yeah.
you can interface with the emotions and frequencies of your pet,
Mhm.
offset that with your emotion. Like you say, just dropping down into your heart
Yes.
and radiating this energy of calm and care and love and gratitude. And it's just a frequency of all of that that's going to start to transmute the energy of your animal. And you'll see them just soften,
Yes.
and they'll sink in. Like when you sink in, they're gonna sink in. And there's this process of entrainment where you are now in a certain frequency. You send that out radiating from your heart because there is a palpable magnetic field that's coming through.
Mhm.
And with the emotion of this desire to connect, of through love and compassion and care, you're you'll reach the heart frequency of your animal, and then
Mhm.
you'll just kind of click, and
Yeah.
there's a connection, and you drop in and you can feel it. The thing about energy work is that it's very subtle. There's a
Yes.
lot of subtle frequencies, and the more you practice tapping into the subtleness and feeling what it feels like in the subtleness, the easier it'll be to recognize what you're doing and what frequencies are there, because we're not taught that.
No. And it's a shame because, we have all these higher capacities. We have imagination, we have intuition, we have perception. Um, we have all these gifts that we're not, excuse me, we're not we're not encouraged to use or develop after some point in childhood. It's like, no, 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 pay attention, focus, stop daydreaming, stop, recite,
Right.
recite, recite. Don't get into your heart. Look out here for the answers, and don't go inside. It's just, it's been
Yeah.
taken out of us, in society, which is a shame. But we can go get it again. We can get that connection and those skills back. But you're right; it does take a little effort and attention to
Mhm.
to find that again.
Right, right. And it's practice, and I would say practice on yourself first.
Hmm.
Those quiet moments, or create a quiet moment and close your eyes, drop into your heart and scan your body. Feel the body feels of where you may have some tightness or some tingling, or pressure or pulsations, or just recognize feelings in your body without fear,
Yeah.
without judgment, without anything, just noticing. And that's why I said this sort of this quiet observation, because it's the act of observation without attachment that allows us to really see what's happening. It's when we put the emotion behind an event of fear or anxiety, um, or trepidation, that it muddies the
Right.
experience. Like my cat's vomiting. Oh my God, my cat's vomiting. Or he has diarrhea. Oh my God, he has diarrhea. It's like, just like, just keep that even sort of, calm frequency.
Hmm. And I think that's a hard thing for a lot of people to do because they get so overwhelmed with worry and fear
Mhm.
because their cat has a symptom, um, that they have trouble getting out of their headspace, right? And that's
Yeah.
human. I think it's human, but I think we can train ourselves to get to shift that energy and shift that focus if we really, really work on it and we make it, really
And
practice.
it's not difficult. It's
No.
not difficult to do that. And that, I think that the fear mentality around our animals is the biggest thing that I experience in humans, in
Mhm.
a relationship. And the question is, sometimes you need to go down a checklist of, what are you afraid of?
Yeah.
Like, what do you, and then I like to ask my clients, what would your life, like, say you have a very sick animal, it's like, what would your life be like if your cat wasn't sick? What would you do? You know,
Mhm.
if you weren't spent, if every day of your life wasn't spent caretaking and worrying and, fussing over, like, how would your life be different?
Mhm.
You And then also, how would your life be different if this pet wasn't with you? What would happen how would you feel? Just really tapping into those hard emotions,
Mhm.
and asking and starting the process of the journey of checking in with yourself and how you feel, and giving yourself allowance to, not judge yourself for anything that you're feeling. I have clients that have these very sick animals that they are just 24/7 involved with them,
Yes.
and they wouldn't know what to do with their own life if these animals weren't around.
Mhm.
You know,
Yes.
they so really address that, like, how do you feel? Like, would you feel, alone or unuseful or not important? Like, where is that self? Like, where are you in this picture? Like, who are you in this relationship? You
Yes.
know, and just I think that's a real question. And once you start having a little bit more of a self identity around your animal, then you can release some of those emotions of fear and anxiety. You
Mhm.
know, I don't know if that makes sense. And that it is a practice to do that.
Yes, absolutely. I think a lot of cat parents feel like if they don't if they don't do something, they feel guilty because they didn't do enough, or they doubt themselves, like, am I doing enough? What should I do? And they get stuck in that cycle of fear and paralysis, so they can't make a change and they can't
Yeah.
move forward because they're just paralyzed. Not, and I know what it's like to have a pet die in front of you under terrible circumstances, and the guilt that comes with that, and doubting everything that you did up to that point that brought you there. Um, but then I've also seen it from the other side once I connected with that pet and he showed me the purpose behind all that,
Hmm.
and it let me release that guilt and that sorrow and replace it with a purpose, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
learning lessons, and it's a shift of it's a shift.
Yeah, and it's a lot of the times our relationships with our animals have meaning for us on a very deep soul level. And,
Mhm.
for instance, I had a client come in, it was on the emergency service, and she came in to put her cat to sleep specifically. And this cat wasn't that old. He was like 10 years old, but he had this chronic respiratory condition
Yeah.
that she has been dealing with for years,
Mhm.
through conventional means.
Right.
She hasn't gone through an integrative or a holistic practitioner. And so, but the cat was not doing well. And her and her husband were resolved that this was the time. And so the story behind that was that this cat came into her life as a stray,
Mhm.
as a baby. He was like a couple of months old,
Oh.
and he was always kind of sickly, and he always kind of had this respiratory thing, and then it just kind of festered to this global
Mhm.
situation that he was dealing with. And the cat came into her life, um, right after her father passed away.
Oh.
Passed away from a chronic respiratory condition
Mm.
that she was nursing him through.
Mhm.
And so when this cat showed up with the same kind of thing that she was, precipitating, right?
Yeah.
This pattern of energy pattern that's coming into her life. I found that very interesting. And we started talking about, well, like, what are her feelings about that? Why does she think that that's a repetitive pattern coming into her life? And, we know that the lungs harbor the energy of grief.
Yes. Yes.
Right? And the element is air, and there's a little bit of water in there. So what is she holding on to? What is she not letting go of? What is she needing to release? So there's a lot going on there. And she came to a lot of aha moments in just the minutes that we were together, as I helped her, transition her cat. And it was beautiful. It was beautiful to bear witness to this woman's journey of reflection of her life, her family, her father, her cat,
Yeah,
and
that's amazing. There's also the emotion of unhealed separation stored in the lungs.
mm,
So grief and unhealed separation often go together a lot. I see that with clients,
yeah,
especially kittens who have been taken from their mama too young, or if something happened and their mama abandoned them somehow, or maybe she was killed and they were left to fend for themselves. I mean, there's a lot of answers that obviously go unknown. But a lot of times those kitties hold on to that grief, and they develop things like the cough, lung related issues, or even um, large intestine issues like chronic diarrhea, because the metal element is connected to the large intestines and the lungs. And so if there's an imbalance there, those can be just emotional blocks that have just totally come out of balance, and therefore you become symptomatic in those two organs.
yeah,
um,
yeah,
and like energy work is so powerful, so when we do clearings for those kinds of things, those blocks, the symptoms just resolve. It is so fascinating and miraculous to see the shift like so quickly. And
yeah. Well, that's energy. That's
it's
how
energy.
energy flows in that way, right? So quickly.
Yes.
And the simplicity around that is a lot of times it's the awareness. It's
Mhm.
the awareness around it, that it's happening, that it's connected, what it's relating to, and then honoring it, giving it, finding the gifts, and letting it go.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's really that simple,
Yeah.
which is it's so beautiful. And you throw in other things like other frequency medicine around that, like light therapy or sound therapy or vibrational things like homeopathy or flower essences, and just things that are gentle.
Mhm.
You kind of throw that into the mix, and then things move faster. It accelerates the process.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's fascinating. That's what I was talking about earlier when I said I'm able to see things from a different lens, because I do look at things through the lens of energy, frequency, and vibration. So it's easier to see where those things are off and what
Hmm.
they're affecting. Um, and you've got the medical diagnosis over here on one paper that's like laying it all out, from a physical perspective. But when you shift and you look at it from the energetic perspective, you can start to see how they cross and they connect. And
Yeah.
it's wild. But it's so amazing because the energy never lies. I mean, it's there. It's just
Right.
we have to put on a different pair of glasses to see. Just
Yeah.
look at it through a different perspective. That's all.
Right. It's moving it around. And, we know that when it comes to our physiology, when they say that unresolved, unmetabolized emotional conflicts are held in your body,
Mhm.
at first that may sound very off to a lot of people, or off-putting, like how, okay, what does that mean? How is that possible? Right. But if you think about it from a more scientific point of view, our bodies and our brains do not know the difference between an experience that was real, virtual, or imaginary.
Mhm.
And so it's going to process it the same way. And so when we have a traumatic event, that is perceived, there's an event and there's a perception of the event.
Yes.
And if you are in your head, marinating the perception of what happened and how traumatic it was to you over and over and over again, your psyche gets overwhelmed with it. And so your body is going to try to help you with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to help try to take away the mental angst around the process, and so that it gets now seated in a part of your body. And there's actually parts of the brain that is mapped out that is very specific to certain body parts.
Mm-hmm.
And so it will send that energetic, that feeling energetically into a body part. And so, now you're, instead of you festering about your, how mad you were about your husband or your significant other cheating on you, you know, your your back starts hurting. Your
Yes.
lower back starts hurting a lot,
Yes.
because you feel so unsupported and you felt so this and so that and all these emotions, and now your back hurts. And so now what happens is that you forget about what you were thinking about, because now you're focusing on your back. And now you got to heal your back. you know? And
Right.
so your life is about doing that now. And your body is just, we think like, oh my God, my body's falling apart. Why would it do that to me? But it is finding a solution to your mental anguish, and our animals will kind of do the same thing for us.
Mm-hmm.
They will take that on in their physiology so that we aren't experiencing that in our own emotional trauma. Like, that has been a thing. I've seen that happen. So when that happens in your animal, check in with yourself about how you're feeling, and what are you thinking, and it's
Yes.
it's a gift and an opportunity as a reflection to let it go.
Mm-hmm. What comes to mind as you were talking is a very common issue in cats, and that's feline cystitis. We know our kitties are so, so sensitive. They're very emotional creatures. And it's so interesting because a lot of times it's emotional stress of some kind that gets that bladder all worked up and causes this imbalance there and cystitis, and they're in a lot of pain, and it's horrible. um and I don't think people are used to looking like that's one specific condition, that if your cat is getting cystitis a lot, like over and over, and it's now feline lower urinary tract disease, which they're like idiopathic, we don't know what causes it. I'm like, I have a few ideas. um you just got to look at things like, what does their life look like, what does their environment look like, uh,
Right.
and like what is off energetically that could be contributing to that kind of stress that they are manifesting in that bladder all the time.
Right. And it's not only about the cat life, the cat environment. Like, I don't have enough litter boxes, or I don't have enough, there's too much noise in the house, or there's too many cats. Like, think of it a little bit more out of the box, bigger into
Mhm.
you,
Yeah.
energetically. Problems with the bladder and urination is usually about a conflict between territory.
Hmm.
And sometimes that seems obvious, where like you're marking your territory and you're separated from something that you want to mark, or something is being taken away from you that you want, right? And a lot of cats, I find that believe it or not, if they're peeing in the house and they are peeing in different places, but yet they don't have a urinary tract infection to show for any of that abnormality, they just want to go outside. They want to go outside, and they want to pee in the world, and they want to be cats, and they want to hunt, and they want to be in the grass, and they want to do all that. And sometimes you gotta take a leap of faith and let that happen, knowing that, yeah, there's dangers out there. There are wild animals, especially in California. There's coyotes,
Hmm.
cars, and yes, that can happen. But what's the alternative? I had a client recently who had a beautiful 2-year-old Bengal,
Mm.
and this Bengal had serious urinary issues in the house,
Oh.
and he was on Prozac
Oh my
for condition. And he was not, it didn't really help. It helped, but it didn't help.
Mhm.
And he came into the hospital with a very bad obstruction of his urinary tract. And it was really, really bad. And I had this conversation with the owner, and I was like, well, I was like, I think he just needs to go outside. I mean, one, he's a Bengal. I mean,
Yeah,
he's like
I
natural,
agree.
like an
Yeah.
ocelot, like a mini ocelot. He needs to just go out and be a cat and be his, tap into his wild nature. And she was like, yeah, I get that feeling, but I was told by all my vets and people that I'm crazy for letting him outside. I'd be a bad owner, that he'd escape and get away and all these things. And I was like, okay, well, think of it this way. Would you rather have an extremely happy cat for 5 years, if he goes outside and then something, traumatic happens, or would you have a really unhappy sick cat for 10 years?
Mhm.
What is our bigger overarching viewpoint here?
Mhm.
For me, I would say live your life, and I'll protect you with energy fields and and good things to
Well,
your
yeah,
little energy bubble.
and there are ways to give them that environmental enrichment safely outdoors if we just be creative in how we do that, you know? So,
Right.
yeah, it doesn't mean you have to let your cat loose on the streets of LA, you know?
No.
You just have to be smart in how you approach that, but yeah, no, I think, cats who are in some cats like that who are high energy are just bored, and boredom is stress, and it it festers, it just festers, and then you get problems like that. So,
Yeah. I
mhm.
mean, I've had numerous cats, and they all lived into their 20s, and nobody had problems. Like, they never had any problems. And I'm not just lucky. It's the way I interact with that. And
Yeah.
and honestly, one of my cats, um he was a dry food junkie,
Mhm, mhm.
and he lived to 23. He was also a hunter.
Okay, okay, so he was getting his raw food somewhere else.
Yeah. So he ate the bunnies and the lizards and the birds.
Yes, yes.
But in the house he wanted to eat, he just wanted his little carb things.
Mhm. That's
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. I think it comes down to, like you said, just being observant and checking in intuitively, like, what do you sense? And there's also a way to do this, like, where you set an intention. Like, I want to check in for my cat, whatever his name is, right? And you just make that your intention. And when you're sitting quietly and just trying to connect, your intention is, I want to check in with him as if you are in him. What do I feel? What do I sense? What emotions are coming up? you know what thoughts are crossing and through the back of my eyes, that I see words and pictures a lot. So, like, what does that look like? What is dropping down into me that I'm picking up on through him or through her? So that's another woo woo way to do it, but that's how they teach us in animal communication too.
Yeah, it's always about intention and intuition. The intention is so important, and that is, in the intention, and the consciousness around what it is you're trying to achieve is paramount in all quantum healing. It is always that. What is my intention? And to be, the more specific you are, the
Yes.
the more you will get a clear answer.
Hmm.
And it's really just learning how to recognize the answers in the forms that you do, because it comes in all different ways. It can come in like a voice that you hear in your head, like words. It could
Hmm.
come as pictures. It could come as sounds, smells, sensations, body feels,
Yes.
and everyone picks it up differently. So you have to just find where where it is for you,
Hmm.
and then cultivate that.
Yeah. It's called, what clairsentience do you have? Is
Mhm.
it clairvoyance? Is it clairaudience, where you hear? Is it claircognizance, where you just have a knowing? Um, clairsentient is where you feel.
Mhm.
The other one, pictures, is it? Um, I guess it's the same as cognizant, right?
Well, Claire, what did you say? Clairvoyance? Did you say that?
Yeah, clairvoyance. Okay, that's the pictures. Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's probably more than that, but that's all I can think of.
It's about five of them. There's five of those, and yeah, and everybody has
Hmm.
all of them, but there's usually one or two that is more predominant in that person.
Yes, I
You
would.
know, I mean, for me, it is very claircognizant is probably my number one,
Hmm. Hmm.
which I think is also kind of the hardest to validate for people because you just know, and there's a deep knowing that you have, and you just I don't know where it came from, but I just know, um,
Yes.
and there's and the clairsentience for me, it's more of those the knowing and the feeling is
Mhm.
for what I interpret, and sometimes the clairaudience as well, but it changes and depending on the situation I'm in, but it's always about setting the intention of what it is that you want to know and tapping into that intuition to receive it. So that's like the sending out and the receiving, through the intention and the intuition. That's the balance and the play with that.
Yes.
And your animals will thank you for that because that's where they resonate at. That's the frequencies that they're on.
Hmm.
You
Yeah,
know.
it's the coolest. It really is the coolest.
I was with this dog the other day, and we were at a restaurant, and it wasn't even my dog; it was my friend's dog. And he was walking away from the table. The leash was pretty long, and I called him over by his name, and he just stood there looking at me. And I was like, "Come on, come over." And he just stood there, and then I just stopped speaking, and I tapped into my heart and my mind, and I invited him to come to me in my mind and with a picture.
Hmm.
And as soon as I did that, he just like and walked over to me. Yeah.
I love that so much.
I was like, "Oh, okay, well, that was easy."
I don't think people really understand how powerful our minds are.
Yeah.
And just to connect like that is it's a simple thing, but it takes practice, and it takes the sense of trusting, right?
Mhm.
Instead of second guessing, like, oh, that didn't really happen. I was just imagining that or whatever. So trusting what you get
Yeah.
is takes practice too. Like, you know,
Yeah, and to practice, you can practice that with your animals. You could just sit in a room and imagine and call them in, using your mind and through pictures. Animals they see pictures,
yeah.
that you send out, and so imagine them, walking through whatever you have, a hallway, a doorway, or something, and just sit there and see what happens.
Hmm.
How long it takes. I mean, it may take 10 minutes, but
Yeah.
if it happens, then just keep trying and just, play with it, and not have an attachment to the outcome.
Right. Right.
That's important. Like if you like, oh, I want it to happen, I want it to happen, I want it to happen, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, because we're putting too much resistance on that energy.
Yeah,
So
right.
it repels instead of attracts. Hmm.
Right.
Yeah, that's funny. Oh,
Yeah.
well, does anybody have any questions before we wrap this up? If so, definitely drop a comment over here. And if you guys are enjoying this conversation, definitely give it a thumbs up. And we appreciate you sharing it with people who you feel would benefit from this information, because we don't feel like enough people know about this. Like I said, we look at things through a different lens, so we get different information that can be very helpful overall to whatever ailment, illness, disease, whatever issue is going on with your sick kitty. So it's just a different perspective, but it's so powerful. And your vets probably are not like Dr. Barrie and do this. There's not very many that do this. So it just gives you another tool in your toolkit that most people don't have, and that's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any final thoughts, Barry, before we wrap up?
Uh, I'm just going to remind people to just be in their heart space, and when in doubt, just be in your heart, act from your heart, and ask yourself, what would love do?
That's a good one.
And then go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is awesome. Well, thank you guys so much, and share this out. Um, we're going to come up with some more good topics for future shows. If you have any questions or ideas or comments or whatever, drop them in. We're looking for what you guys want to learn about too. So
Okay.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your evening, everyone, and we'll see you guys again really soon.
Yeah. Thank you.
All righty. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Let's see if we can get this. Okay. Awesome. Get this intended. So, see if we can get this to end.